And hello everybody, welcome back to the channel. Right, I want you to stop whatever you're doing for the next 15 minutes, because what I'm about to show you is one of those stories that makes your jaw hit the floor and then makes you absolutely furious. We are in a cost of living crisis, energy bills through the roof, NHS waiting lists that would make a Soviet-era bureaucrat blush, councils going bankrupt, food banks in every postcode. And this week, in a quiet little committee room in Westminster, a politician genuinely, honestly, sat down and said out loud what most of them privately know but would never admit, that Parliament is on course to waste tens of billions of your money refurbishing its own offices, and nobody in charge has the faintest clue what they're doing. The story barely made the front pages, buried, ignored, because if the mainstream media gave this the oxygen it deserves, people would be rioting, metaphorically speaking, at the ballot box. The man who said it was Rupert Lowe, MP for Great Yarmouth. And before we get into exactly what he said, I want to ask you something directly. Drop it in the comments right now. Yes or no? Do you believe a single major public infrastructure project in this country has been delivered on time and on budget in the last 20 years? Go on, I'll wait, because I think we both already know the answer. To understand why this Westminster renovation disaster matters so much, you need a bit of background, because this isn't new. And that's the whole point. The Palace of Westminster, the building that houses the House of Commons and the House of Lords, is frankly falling apart. Asbestos in the walls, Victorian sewage infrastructure, electrical wiring that belongs in a museum. Everyone has known for years that the building needs a serious overhaul. Fair enough. It's a UNESCO World Heritage Site and a functioning parliament. It needs work. But here's where it goes sideways. The project, officially called the Refurbishing Renewal programme, has been in planning for the better part of a decade. Cost estimates have ballooned from around £4 billion to figures now being discussed in the range of £35 to £45 billion. Depending on which estimate you read, we're looking at a potential final bill larger than the entire annual defence budget of this country. Now, and this is crucial, I'm not going to pretend this is purely a Labour problem. This project has been mismanaged across Conservative and Labour governments alike. The rot is institutional. The dysfunction is structural. This is what happens when the people spending the money aren't the people earning it, when accountability has been designed out of the system, and when governance is so layered and bureaucratic that nobody is actually responsible for anything. That is the disease, and what Rupert Lowe exposed in that committee room is precisely the symptoms. So, let's get into it. What did Lowe actually say, and why does it matter? Rupert Lowe sat in front of officials from the parliamentary authorities at a Public Accounts Committee session. That's the select committee specifically tasked with scrutinising how public money gets spent. And he asked them, point blank, how they are managing costs and governance on this project. And what he heard back horrified him. His word, horrified. Now, I want to be clear about something before we go further, because context matters here. The Public Accounts Committee isn't a media circus. It's not a punchy debate in the chamber where people are playing to the gallery. It's a detailed, evidence-based session where officials sit across from MPs and answer specific, technical questions about spending. When a member of that committee uses the word horrified on the record, that is significant. That is someone who has genuinely looked under the bonnet and doesn't like what they found. And Lowe isn't just another career politician reading from a briefing note prepared by a 22-year-old researcher. Before he entered Parliament, he was chairman of Southampton Football Club. He has sat in the room where real money is on the line, where projects either deliver or they don't, where the consequences of failure are immediate and personal. He knows exactly what competent project delivery looks like, and he was looking at its opposite. So let's go through what he identified, point by point, because each one of these on its own would be concerning. Together, they paint a picture of institutional dysfunction so deep it should shake your faith in every major public project this country has ever announced. Point 1. Too many boards, death by committee. The first thing Lowe flagged was the governance structure. Now I know that sounds dry. Governance, boards. Bear with me, because this is actually where billions of pounds go to die. The Restoration and Renewal programme is currently overseen by multiple boards, a sponsor board, a client board, delivery teams, parliamentary working groups, heritage consultees, and various other layers of review and sign-off. Lowe described this structure directly as a disaster. Not concerning, not worrying, a disaster. Here's why he's right. When you have that many decision-making layers, the first thing that happens is that nobody is actually in charge. Every significant decision has to travel up the chain, get reviewed, get referred sideways to another board for sign-off, come back down, get queried, go back up again. The process becomes the product. Meetings about meetings, reports about reports, and the building still not touched. And here's the part that nobody in Westminster wants to say out loud. Every extra layer of governance creates more work, and more work means more consultants, more program managers, more project coordinators, more people billing by the day to manage the complexity that their own presence helped create in the first place. This is a self-perpetuating machine. The more bloated the governance becomes, the more expensive the governance becomes, completely independently of a single brick being laid or a single pipe being replaced. The consultancy class absolutely loves a project like this, a 10-year timeline, an undefined scope, multiple competing boards all needing to be kept aligned. That's not a project, that's a careers fair for people who charge £1,500 a day. I want you to think about this honestly and drop your answer in the comments right now. In your job, in your life, have you ever seen a project with 15 managers and no single accountable leader actually finish on time and on budget? Because I haven't, not once. This is Project Management 101. It's what every business school teaches in week 1. You need clear ownership, a small empowered team, one person whose name is on the door when it goes wrong. The people in charge of the most expensive building project in British history have apparently not grasped this. Point 2. Costing now for work starting in 2032. The second issue Lowe raised is one that should make every single person watching this genuinely angry, because it's so obviously transparently absurd that it's almost insulting they try to defend it with a straight face. Officials are currently producing detailed cost estimates, the kind of figures that get reported in the newspapers that get used to justify the program that politicians point to when they claim they're being responsible with public money for construction work that may not even begin in 2032. That is 6 years ago. 6 years. Think about what the world looked like 6 years ago. We didn't know COVID was coming. We didn't know energy prices were about to double. We didn't know that global supply chains were about to seize up and drive the cost of steel, timber, and concrete through the roof. Nobody predicted that UK construction labour market would tighten the way it has. Nobody forecast the inflation spike that followed. And yet here we are, with officials producing cost figures for 2032 construction work as though those numbers are meaningful, as though a cost estimate produced today for work starting in 6 years on a building of extraordinary complexity in a cost environment that is fundamentally unknowable is in any way a reliable basis for public accountability. Lowe called this out directly. He noted that construction costs and oil prices, which feed into materials costs across the whole supply chain, will be completely different by the time the first contractor goes on site. He's absolutely right. The only question is which direction they'll move. And based on the trajectory of every comparable public project in recent British history, Crossrail, HS2, the NHS IT programme, I think we already know the answer. Up, and always by more than they told you. Here's my question. If a private company produced this kind of financial forecasting to its shareholders, presenting figures as current cost estimates for work 6 years out, what would the FCA do? What would the markets do? So why are we accepting this from the people managing our money? Point 3. No fixed design, no locked costs, no single person responsible. This is the one that really got to Lowe, and it's the one that reveals most clearly just how institutionally broken this project actually is. In the private sector, and Lowe drew on his direct experience delivering a stadium here, when you're running a major construction project, you do things in a very specific order, because that order exists for a reason. You fix the design first, completely, every detail locked down, no ambiguity about what you're building. Then you cost it properly against that fixed design. Then you identify every risk you can find, and you work to close them off before a single penny is committed to construction. And critically, you do not allow scope to creep. No endless variations, no new requirements bolted on mid-build, because every single change costs money, causes delay, and benefits precisely one group of people, the consultants and contractors billing by the hour for the privilege of managing the chaos they helped create in the first place.
What Lowe found at Westminster is a project where the design is not fixed, where the scope is not locked down, where changes can still be introduced, requirements can still evolve, and the fundamental parameters of the project remain, years into the planning process, essentially open-ended. Let that sink in. Years of planning, billions already spent on consultants and feasibility studies and governance structures, and the design is still not fixed. That means the governance problem and the costing problem we've just talked about aren't separate issues, they feed each other in a loop. Open scope means endless consultations. Endless consultations mean more boards mean slower decisions mean more time passing, more cost inflation, more consultant days, and a final bill that will bear almost no relationship to whatever figure is being publicly quoted today. And most damning of all, the thing that should genuinely keep every taxpayer awake at night, is that in this structure, when it eventually, inevitably goes catastrophically over budget, there will be nobody personally responsible. There is no single individual whose career definitively ends when this blows up. There is no one whose own money is at stake. The accountability has been so thoroughly distributed across so many boards, committees, and review bodies that failure, when it comes, will be structurally ownerless. Everyone will have a reason why it wasn't their call. Everyone will have a board they could point to, and the bill will land with the public, as it always does. I mean, what world are these people living in? How do you sit in front of a parliamentary committee and defend this with a straight face to the people whose taxes are paying for every single day of it? How do officials look at the British taxpayer currently being asked to pay more, work longer, and accept less from public services, and present this as responsible stewardship of public money? It is an absolute disgrace, and the fact that it barely made the front pages tells you everything you need to know about whose interests the press thinks are worth protecting. Let me put this in perspective, because I think we've become so numb to big numbers that they stop meaning anything. £40 billion. That is roughly the entire annual schools budget for England. It would fund the NHS's nursing workforce for years. It would clear the repair backlog on every crumbling school building in the country and still leave change. It could build thousands of miles of road, dozens of hospitals, and hundreds of thousands of social homes. Instead, it is being pointed at a building that politicians work in. Now, let's do the global comparison, because this is where it gets embarrassing. The Sydney Opera House, one of the most complex architectural projects in modern history, was a fiasco, yes, but it was completed. Lessons were learned internationally about how not to run a public megaproject. Countries from Singapore to the UAE have since built entire cities of infrastructure, airports, metros, national stadiums, on time and on budget, by doing exactly what Lowe described: fixing the design, locking the costs, building in accountability, and holding people responsible when they fail. We can't refurbish one building. This isn't bad luck. This is what happens when people managing public money face zero personal consequences for failure. If a private developer blew the budget by 900%, they'd be bankrupt. If a public official does it, they get a reshuffle and a LinkedIn post about lessons learned. We are being asked to tighten our belts while they gold-plate theirs. And the audacity, the sheer staggering audacity of doing it without so much as a proper governance structure in place, that should make every single person watching this furious. Rupert Lowe walked into that committee room and said what anyone with half a brain and a day's worth of project management experience could see. The Westminster Restoration and Renewal programme, as currently structured, is heading towards one of the most expensive public sector failures this country has ever seen. Too many boards, no fixed costs, no accountability, and a timeline so distant that by the time the bill arrives, the people who signed off on it will be long gone. This isn't about left or right, it's about basic competence. It's about whether the people entrusted with public money treat it with the same respect they'd give their own. And right now, the answer is clearly no. Guys, am I being too harsh, or is this exactly what you're seeing? Public money vanishing into projects that never deliver while you're told to make do with less. Drop it in the comments, smash the like button, hit subscribe so we can keep cutting through the noise together, and I'll see you in the next one.